Today is August 18th, 2016. It's 9:12 a.m. Pacific time. We're going to be looking at Tesla. So it's coming up on 9:30 in about 15 minutes. And Tesla's made a really good run. We have a 60-minute, 10-minute, 3-minute, 1-minute chart and a 30-second chart, which has not loaded yet. We also have a monthly, a weekly, and a daily. And then we have a time and sales window. So we have a double top. It's coming up on 9:30, which is a common reversal time. I've created a schedule called the OTS, Observed Time Tendency Schedule. And we know that at about 9:30, stocks that have made strong runs up tend to pull back or have a reversion to the mean. So we're going to assess this trade and see where we stand and if it's time for an entry. So I'm going to quickly take a look at the 60-minute chart. We have a downtrend line that's been broken, so we might have a change of trend. Longer term, no. Shorter term, yes. We've had a trend line break. It could be a bear flag, though. I see a double top on the 10-minute. Top, top. One thing on the 10-minute that gives me pause is, although the H bars on the MACD are starting to cycle down, still have a pretty wide amount of negative space, and the slopes on the MACD are pointed up. That leads me to believe we might need a little bit more time. I'm going to go ahead and enter now, because the most important thing to me is low risk, small risk, well-defined risk. I'm going to sell short 1,000 shares of Tesla. I actually missed my ideal entry doing this video, and I'm going to go ahead and just do a market order. I'm executing 1,000 shares short at market on Tesla. My orders come up on the screen. I actually wanted to get in closer to 25.44, but while recording this video and talking, I missed it. So now I need to think about, I've actually already thought about my stops, but I'm going to go ahead and use this wonderful tool that NinjaTrader has. It's a drawing tool. It's the risk reward tool. So I mark my entry, I mark my stop, which I'll put at the high, and then it automatically gives me a risk reward ratio of 1 to 3. So now I know where my target is. And you can see that that's quite reasonable given the day's move and the day's range. You can see we've got the entry on the chart now, and I like to circle it just to highlight it. Now we wait and see what happens. Things that I consider positive about this trade are, although the 10-minute MACD doesn't quite look ready, the 3-minute and the 1-minute both show a negative bias. We've got a crossover, slopes are down. We had the H bars were decelerating there. Here we're about ready to have a crossover. The slopes are down, negative space is small, and again we've got the H bar cycling down. And now we wait. While I'm waiting, that's the perfect time to work on my journal, my trading journal. I like to include the strategy I'm using. This case is a double top near a reversion to the mean time. I might also consider any related index. So in this case it would be the S&P or the NASDAQ, and I like to see what they're doing. And you can see that it's starting to pull back, the SPY. This is a 10-minute chart of it. Same with the QQQ. It's also looking a bit weak. There it is. I like to jot down the date, the time. Eventually I'll jot down my results. I like to note my position size. So anything that has to do with the execution of the trade, I'll start to log. Then also, I like to make a note of my logic or reasoning for the entry, any thoughts or feelings I had about the trade before I went in. Same goes for stops. My logic, my reasoning, my thoughts, my feelings. And then again for exits, when we eventually take that. When the trade's done, make a note in my journal of what would I like to sustain? What were the positives? What were my strengths throughout this trade? Why do I think it was a winner? Or why did I do well? What worked? Additionally, I like to make a note of any of my weaknesses or negatives. What could I have done better or improved upon? What didn't work? And then I consider any other ideas or takeaways that I might have had, or actions or a focus I might want to emphasize on the next trade to help me improve. And then finally, I'll note if there's any follow-up action that I need to take tomorrow or over the weekend to help improve my trading based on the results of this trade. That might include some mechanism for improving my timing. Another thing I like to make a note of in my journal is pre-trade information. I like to know all the different support and resistance levels in the trade that I see. That could be on a daily chart as well as an hourly chart. It could also be Fibonacci retracements. Anything that I think is going to help me identify future setups or be able to weed out future setups that perhaps aren't as good and maybe are trades I should avoid. So we look at the screen, we can see it's starting to give way a little bit. Hopefully we'll get a nice waterfall spill here in about 7 minutes, give or take. I'd like to throw out some ideas about journaling. I am not a big fan of writing things down. In fact, I can't stand writing things down. And I also don't like to type, in Excel or Word or any of that. Too many times when I've been journaling by writing, I've missed something important on the screen. And also, my dominant modality is auditory. So for me, I like to record. What you just heard was an alarm notifying me that it's a common transition time. I just set a little alarm on my iPhone. It goes off at various times throughout the day. But what I was saying is, for me, I like to use an auditory recording. I can record while I trade. I can talk. It's no big deal. And then later, at the end of the day, when trading is over, I can go back and write these things down. If you don't have a problem with writing things down and you don't have a lot of trades going on like I do, sometimes I'll have 8 to 10 trades open at once, then journaling by hand or in Word or in Excel might work for you. One thing you want to make sure of that you include in whatever journal you keep is your trade management, how you're handling the stops, your trailing stops, why you're getting out, what the trade plan was. It's really just about doing all the little things every day to make yourself better, to make your trading better. That's why you keep a journal. That's why you take screenshots. I'm also a huge advocate of taking screenshots of your trade and logging them. I prefer to put all the trade journal information directly on the chart for that trade. That way it's self-contained and it's very organized, and you just punch up one picture and everything you need to know about that trade is there. You don't have to be scattered and flip through pages and all this nonsense. Or you could also embed or attach a audio file to your JPEG screenshot. You might also want to make a note of what your goal for your risk reward was and if it was met or surpassed. It's helpful to have a trade journaling checklist so you don't overlook anything. Have a process that you follow repeatedly over and over. Pre-trade information, trade execution information, trade logic, reasoning, emotions, things of that nature. So the trade is slowly slowly progressing in our favor. I would have liked to seen a little faster movement on the time and sales right here. I'd like to see a quicker tempo, but even though tempo's not that quick, to the downside, we did see a lot of sells, a lot of bids here. A lot of times when a stock trades, it's not uncommon for there to be a little check back where it'll start to go down and then come back up and then continue its downward journey. So you don't want to be afraid. I'm trying to catch trends. If you're scalping, yeah, then you might want to respond, and you might also want to be on the 1 minute chart. But if you're trying to catch a bigger trend or a bigger reversion to the mean, then a small check back shouldn't freak you out. Another thing I like to do during the day is if I'm struggling, or even if I'm doing well, I'll replay the trades that I've made in my head. Especially if I made mistakes or it didn't turn out quite like I wanted, maybe my timing was off, I'll just stop and visualize the trade unfolding, but in the replay in my mind, I picture myself executing everything perfectly. Try to avoid making things complicated if at all possible. The more complicated it is, the less useful it is, and the less likely you're going to be, the less likely it is that you'll do it, or follow it, or execute it. So I notice we have a long shadow here. I just like to call them tails and horns. It makes it easier rather than having to say the lower shadow, the upper shadow. That caught my attention. Right now we're up about $570. That's decent. Not great, but decent for a little trade. I like to blow up my charts every now and then and get a larger overview. It's important not to have myopic vision when it comes to trades. You can't look at just your little piece of the trade. You need to be aware of the larger context, which is the whole move. So there is room for it to go to the downside. I'm also looking for past areas of consolidation where it might find support. It looks like that's where this candle found some support. It dipped all the way down and then bounced back up about pretty much near this prior area, this prior consolidation. I've still got good slopes, good negative space, H bars cycling down, histogram bars. I tend to abbreviate a lot. Each chart I have set up is a little bit different. On the 60 minute, I have volume in RSI 5 with a 3 period smoothing. The 10 minute, 3 minute, 1 minute, 30 second, they all have MACD, but the 10 minute has the opening high low close of the previous day and the opening high low of today. You can see the red is today, the salmon is yesterday, the dark blue is also yesterday's close. Both those were the low, by the way. Yellow is, bright yellow is today's open, and the dull yellow or kind of orange is yesterday's open. So those are also potential places that this stock could find support. On the 3 minute chart, I've got a 30 period 2 standard deviation Bollinger Band. I've got moving averages, all exponential. At the 5, 9, 10, 20, and 30 EMA. On the 3 minute chart, I have the 5, 9, and 20 EMA, and then I also have a 30 period 2 standard deviation regression channel, and can help me identify the direction of the short-term trend, especially when action's a little choppy or a little wavy. And then on the 32nd, I just have price, MACD, the 5, the 9, and the 20 EMA. The 5 is green, the 9 is brown, the 20 is blue, and the 30 is magenta. So this stock is making some progress. I'm very curious to see how it's going to behave as it gets near this area. Right now we're up about $740. Still have good slopes on the and negative space on the 3 minute, 1 minute. The 10 minutes starting to look like it wants to roll over a little bit. You notice the slope went from up to flat. Now it's starting to roll over. H-bars continue to cycle down. Ideally, what I'd like to see happen is once we have this crossover on the 10 minute, or the crossover becomes imminent, so to speak, maybe hasn't happened but getting very, very close, I'd like to really see price let go and waterfall to the downside for a nice exhaustion move, at which point we'll start to lock in some gains. Just make a note of what's working and what's not working. Alright, we see price breaking below where we thought support might kick in, and did kick in last time. There's nothing I love more than when all the MACDs start to synchronize. They're all cycling down, they're all sloping down, they all have negative space. Got a lot of sell orders here. Looks like this trade might be finding some support here. We'll see. We've got another tail. I'd really like to see this let go and shake out nice and hard to the downside. I love to short because shorts always seem to move much, much quicker than longs. We're also in oil today, UWTI. I can't record that screen right now, but we're up about $4,000 in that. And it looks like it might be losing a little intraday steam and momentum. So we're going to think about taking some partial profits on that. If not, close out the whole position. It's been so strong, I'm inclined to scale out of half and let the other half run and tighten my stop. So now it's going to be time I need to adjust my stop for profit. I like to use a stop market. And now you see the stop order pops up on the screen. Normally I do that immediately, like I said. Some other positions I'm in right now, I still have a quarter of a position of Avid. And that's up about 60 some odd percent. I checked this morning, I think it was up 63%. And PGNX, that's a swing. Those are both kind of swing position trades. They start out as often day trades or swing trades, and then if they perform well, I'll swing them on over into a longer position trade, and I'll hold it as long as it's performing well. I'm up about, I think, 35% in PGNX. Yeah, up 34% in PGNX. And it's been running sideways-ish, kind of a horizontal consolidation, shallow pullback. So I'm looking at Tesla. It's not really doing that much right now, but we're going to remain patient. I know from experience and from my OTS time schedule that 10 o'clock-ish is another time that stocks tend to let go. If I see the stock starting to climb up around 10:17 or showing some kind of strength around that time, I'll probably go ahead and start closing out this position. Another stock I just closed out today was HOLX. It was a re-entry. Original entry made about 3 or 4%, and then the re-entry I made another 3 or 4%. The stock just wasn't moving that great. It looks like it might be finding some support now, so if everything sets up again, I might re-enter that. I'm going to be looking to short gold in the next few weeks, especially if the Japanese yen should start to show some weakness. I would expect to see gold pull back. Well, I'm not seeing the kind of weakness I would have liked to have seen here. So I'm going to maybe tighten up my stop a little bit. Being careful not to make it too tight. I don't want to choke the trade and get shaken out by noise. When I look at this time and sales, I see mostly selling, very little buying. So that adds to my optimism about the trade going lower. It's really important to be patient while you're trading. It's a little counterintuitive, but you don't want to be neurotic and overly controlling. Once you've established your initial risk, let the trade unfold. If it's acting right, it's moving in your favor, then you can afford to be a little more patient. Notice the pace on the time and sales is starting to pick up a little bit. If the stock price should start to fall, we would expect to see this time and sales speed up. We would also expect to see the spread on the price by the market makers decreasing. So hypothetically speaking, if the spread on Tesla was 15 cents and it's moving really slowly, once it starts speeding up and price starts to fall more rapidly, I would expect maybe to see Tesla's price spread drop to 10 cents or maybe even 9 or 8 cents. I just saw it drop from 19 to 11 as price started to make this larger plunge right here. So I'm constantly reevaluating the trade. 60-minute, it's gone from near overbought conditions. It's starting to come down a little bit. Keeping an eye on the time and sales. Starting lots of selling. Tempo started to pick up a little bit. Noticing on the 10-minute chart that price is dipping below the opening price of the day. Price is also dipping below the low of yesterday. Now this might be an area of support. We just don't know. But I do like how the MACD is rolling over. It's having a crossover. Still cycling down. 3-minute, 1 minute. Okay, the 1 minute's starting to cycle up a little bit, so we could have a check back, pull back, throw back, whatever you want to call it. They're all the same thing. The slopes are still down. There's still some negative space, but you can see momentum is kind of slowing. So I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to the time and sales. Right now we're at $1,000, about $1,090. So I've got 2 sell orders in here now. I'm going to expand this to make it a little easier to see. I'm going to trail one a little bit closer. Maybe I'm going to use the 9 EMA. And I'll keep this other one at the 20. Change this down to 5. So I've now split my position, or split my stops, I guess, for my total position. If we don't see any support at this morning and yesterday's open, we could get a nice little run here. It's coming up on 10 o'clock. Sometimes you will get a little bounce in the opposite direction around 10, 10:02, 10:03. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the 5 and lock in a little bit of profit. Should price take a little jump against me, then I've still got another half. Looks like we're going to get taken out here. If we don't get this first stop hit, then the stock could make a really nice move down. Whenever you're trading, you need to ask yourself, what should the stock be doing? If I have a short bias and I've shorted the stock, what should the stock be doing? It should be falling. What should it be doing when it pulls back? Because it's very rare that stocks go straight up or straight down. I would expect the pullbacks to be shallow, to be weak, to not move above the 5 EMA. That would be a real sign of weakness. A shallow little pullback in price that couldn't even get above the 5 EMA. And our stop got hit. So let's see, it looks like we sold short at 225.05 and we cashed out half of our position at 224.24. Yeah, we made about $405 on that first half, 81 cents a share. About the psychology of scaling out, it's usually a good idea when you scale out on a day trade to do 50% of your position. Because if the stock should move against you, psychologically you're going to think, well, thank goodness, at least I sold half. But then if it works in your favor, you think, well, thank goodness, at least I still have half of a position. So it looks like, if you look at the 10-minute chart, you can see that it appears to be finding support at today and yesterday's open, roughly. But we're going to remain patient, see if we can't get it to fall a little bit more. Going to tighten up that second stop to keep up with the 20 EMA. Whenever you think about where you want to put your stop, you want to think about avoiding the noise so you can capture the true move, but you also need to consider the spread. If you have a 20-cent spread, it can take a big chunk out of your profit, especially if you have a lot of shares. 1,000 shares with a 20-cent spread is $200 that the market makers take from you. Some other charts that I'm watching today are also HRTX and SRNE. So far this year, I've found that stocks in the $3 to $10 range, or even really the $3 to $8 range, have performed the best. So I'm constantly reassessing the trade. Time and sales, a lot of negative action going on there. Everything looks pretty neutral on the 60-minute chart. This could be the beginning of a new trend with a slight pullback, or it could be a bear flag. We don't know. 10-minute chart, we've got that crossover. The H bars are cycling down. Had a nice move down off that double top. Little concerned that support's kicking in here at the today's open and yesterday's open. 3-minute chart. Okay, we've got some H bars beginning to cycle up. On the plus side, we still have the slopes down with a nice wide negative space. But we do need to pay attention, and this could be a foreshadowing or forewarning that bias might be in the process of changing. See if price can get above this swing high here, the swing high close. When something like this happens, I like to draw a box around it. It's a little strategy I created. I like to have all my lines and circles and everything the same color. I don't want my chart to look like a 3-ring circus. So I take my little box and I put it around the last downtrending candle and the first reversal, green candle, and I wait it out. A break to the upside of this box, that's rather bullish bias. A break to the downside would be a negative bias. I'm going to tighten my stop a little bit, but I don't want to get overly crazy, overly nervous. I want to give that stock some room to sort the supply and demand out. Over here on the 1-minute chart, the H bars have cycled up, but they haven't continued to go up. Looks like they might be finding a little bit of resistance. Price might be. And when I look at this time and sales, all I see are sales. Not seeing much buying going on. Again, it's 10:13. Within the next 5 minutes, we should know what's going to happen. If it's going to make another leg down, or if it's going to reverse and go back up. The 30-second chart has a lot more noise. It can offer a little bit of forewarning sometimes as to whether this little move here is a pullback or if it's a change of trend, might be beginning. And we had a gap up and it took us out. So that's the end of the trade. That might have been noise, but chances are it's not. Let's find out how we did on this trade. Well, after slippage fees, we made about $700. So we gave back about $300 or $400, which is really probably a little more than most people would be comfortable giving back. But I'm trying to catch the big trends, and so I'm okay with it. I hope you found some of the information in this live trade video helpful. If you have any questions, let me know.